All right. So am I audible properly to you all, and the screen is visible, right?
Yes, sir.
So there are a few doubts you have sent. I mean, apart from that, you can also ask if you have more. Let me go through one by one. So one of the doubts came that to know a little bit more about higher order logics and the different logics that I mentioned at the end of the predicate logic lecture. So first of all, if you dig down to logics, there are many intricacies of it, and many things are not in the scope of our syllabus. So higher order logics are actually, if you look at the scope of the syllabus, we have up to first order. Higher order logic isn't is there in the syllabus, but still, since you have some doubts and all, I let me clarify one. So, one of the examples of higher order logic is temporal logic. Let me answer first, and then I will answer what this expression means, as some of you have raised. So, see what happens in your propositional or the Boolean world, that in a particular world, you can connect the events of that world using connectives. In predicate logic, you extend that by quantification, trying to add some more information to be expressed. For example, when wherever someone goes, someone follows. For all, there exist, these are quantifiers to say every person, some engineers or contractors. You have seen the examples. We can also write some function symbols, like you have seen age of x. So these are additions to the propositional logic and making it first order logic to express a computable scenario. And you have also noticed that predicate logic can express any computable function. Now, all of them happens in the present time world that you reside. So you can write expressions of the arguments that is given considering the present world. However, in circuits and in many domains, you need to relate different time worlds. For example, that suppose you are designing a sequential circuit, then you need to specify the behavior of the sequential circuit by telling that something happens in this cycle, then something happens in the next cycle. Or maybe that always the output should not be, both output should not be parked always at one. In future, I want something to be true, and then in the next cycle, I want that line to lower. So all this thing happens in electronic circuit designs. For that, we have certain operators which combines actually two different worlds. So you have a time world at T1, you have another time world T2. So these time worlds are evolving. So this is cycle 1, this gets evolved to cycle 2, this gets evolved to cycle 3, and so on. So how can we relate the propositions or the arguments between these two time worlds is a different logic than we studied in this course as predicate and propositional. So that logic is called temporal logic. And it has constructs. For example, it has next, it has a future, it has an always, it has an until. So next says that something is true in the next time world or in the next cycle. Future says that something is true in the future. Always says that something is true always, and until says that something is true until something else gets true. So it doesn't impose which world, but it says P is true, P followed by a Q. So these are some of the constructs that usually is followed in a different higher order logic to relate to time worlds, and the application of this to specify circuits or electronic systems mostly. And also there are many other extensions of these temporal logics, but that is beyond our syllabus. So this is one of the higher order logics or a different logic that you propose. The second question came in the fact that what does this higher order logic extra specify? I mean, what is the different thing than the predicate or first order logic this logic specify? If you look very carefully in predicate logic, you have predicates which can take variables inside it, and you can have quantification over those variables. Right? You can have quantifications over those variables, and you know how which is the free variable, bound variable, and all that. Suppose I I have this kind of a predicate with the quantification, and then I have a z variable as well. You know that this variable is free, whereas this is bounded and this is also bounded. Sorry, made the arrows in a wrong manner. This is bounded by here and this is bounded due to this. So similar is in the case of function symbols, where we have seen an example of age of a person X. So suppose I mentioned that age of every person is greater than 10. So then I can have to quantify it for all X, age of X is greater than 10. Assuming X is a person, otherwise you need to also have a predicate called person X and age of X is greater than 10. So this is the thing. So greater than also you can have a predicate symbol by telling greater than age of X, comma 10, which means that age of the first element is greater than 10. The other way also. Which means that up to predicate logic, you can only quantify the variables that are present in a function symbol or the variables that are present in a predicate symbol. However, there is no way to quantify the predicates. I cannot say that for all age, I cannot say there exists that predicate and then form the formula. This is beyond the scope what is being allowed by the first order logic. So therefore, the higher order logic comes into picture. And one such example, to just to quench your curiosity, I gave it. Many of you may have already sensed what this example or what this specification relates to. So this specification actually relates to a mathematical induction specification, where it says that something is true, whatever be the predicate, for all predicates that satisfy mathematical inductions, that that predicate at zeroth for n equal to 0 is true. And I know for if it is true for several n's, it will follow for the next steps as well. Here Sx, you may think of a different manner. It is something called m plus k. If the predicate is true from 1 to m, then something m plus k is true, where k can be 0 to, k is more than 0. So it just follows the induction principles. That then if this thing happens, then I can say for every y that particular propositions or that particular statement that you are saying for induction is true. Just try to assume for the 1 plus 2 this induction, which we say as n into n plus 1, sum of natural numbers up to n is this. So how do you prove it? You prove it for 0, that is this one. And you specify for all n, or rather all m less than n, and then go for Sx equal to m plus 1. By assuming for everything till m, you try to prove for m plus 1 it is true. Then you state that if such is the case, then mathematical induction proves that whatever be the proposition, that whatever be the statement or the predicate that you are assuming to be true, that happens for every occurrence of it. Okay, so that is just, this is a mathematical induction, specifying mathematical induction to be holding with something, some statement P. So that statement P is for all natural numbers. That statement P could be something different. That statement P could be Fibonacci number equal to something, some groups using mathematical induction. Okay. So this is, a very, very brief overview of higher order logic and the differences with what we learned up to predicate logic. Any questions, or we do not want to dig more details into it because it's separately a subject in every sense. But if you have any small questions, we can answer around this. Okay, so let me move on to the second query. This is an interesting query. I request the student to also do with it. So somebody says the example that I have given for the predicate logic about the passengers in traveling in the second class and wealthy. So somebody says that what if I change some of the predicates and define my own predicates? Absolutely, it could be done, because predicates are something that looking into the statement someone figures out, so that he or she might derive the goal based on the arguments formulation to predicate logic formulas. So just try to do using this one. Somebody says that travel XC if I assume that X travels in C. On the contrary, if you remember, I have given two clauses, two predicates for that. First, X meaning that X travels in first class. Second, X meaning that X travels in second class. Now these two, your friend want to unify and say, I will tell this. So for the first class, I will say X1. For the second class, I will say X2. Just to remember, in the hindsight, you remember that the domain of C here is only 1 and 2. Okay, C could be either 1 or 2. Okay, so with these two things in our mind, one the definition of the new predicate and one the definition of the domain, let us encode and derive. So what do you feel the first statement would be? Every passenger either travels in first class or second class. Here the or is an exclusive or, obviously, because someone could not travel in fourth class together. So we encoded it as for all X, passenger X implies. Now see, I will use this travel clause, travel predicate. Travel X comma 1 and not travel X comma 2. This is traveling in the first class, or not travel X comma 1 and travel X comma 2. Agreed?
Sir, if we take X to be a passenger, then we need not mention that pass X implication, right?
If X is only the passenger stage. But I mean, to see, if, I mean, here in this statement, since there is nothing except passengers, you can assume that. But if there are other statements involving that, see, X can be wealthy but not a passenger, right? Maybe, I mean, arguments could go like that. Right? If your proposition is that you want to not to use this passenger X. You want to assume that X means it's a passenger. The domain of X is all passengers, right?
Yes, sir.
But the thing is that C, if how do you encode then C is not wealthy? I am not telling C is not passenger or C is a passenger. Understood?
Okay.
So X here I assume, so when I assume X
Could you
to
repeat?
be, okay, should I repeat once again? I am saying that your friend suggested, yeah, what is your question? Can you repeat your question? I could not hear you.
So you said a passenger of X was necessary because there was this clause about wealthiness. I mean, being
Yeah.
wealthy or not. So could you repeat that?
Yeah, I am saying that it is written that a person is wealthy or not. You need a predicate to demonstrate that. You need a predicate to demonstrate a person is a passenger. So if you eliminate the predicate for passenger, then and assume every X is a passenger, whenever I apply this X, the domain of X is only the passenger. Then you already assume that someone is not wealthy, he should be in the passenger list as well. But this is not explicitly mentioned in the argument. You are over assuming. Agreed?
But Professor, everyone in this problem are passengers, right? Regardless of whether they're wealthy or not wealthy, they are passengers.
As a human reading everything till the goal clause, you can make a prediction for that. As a machine, so see, what is the role of having a formal logic to encode and derive? There will be derivation rules and there will be encoding rules to directly encode, and given the encoding to a machine, it could automatically derive. Right? So
Yes,
as
sir.
a machine, you will see statement by statement, and there is a chance that you are assuming that every X is a passenger here. Nowhere it is written that every X is a passenger. There is no statement stating that everyone in the domain is a passenger. It is implicitly because we are only dealing with passengers, you can understand.
Okay. Okay, sir.
Okay, so one of you have raised this question that travel x. You see, I do not change anything. I am doing the same thing. Earlier I use first x here, and I use second x here, and here this is my first x, this is my second x. Now the proposition changed due to this one coming in with x and two coming in with x. The rest of the formula that we build up for f2, f3, and f4 will be the same. Only fx will be replaced by this, and sx will be replaced by this. Clear? We have raised this question. Now is it easy to derive? Can you derive with the same? I think the same thing you can apply as we have applied earlier to derive using fx and sx, right? Only thing you need to remember here is this fact. That, so what does this derive? This derives that travel x comma 1 or travel x comma 2. Okay. This thing is, I'm saying that this one, sorry, I'm not want to say one. I want to say that this x comma 1 and x comma 2 are the only two options to travel. Okay. And this replaces your fx and this replaces your sx. The rest derivation is the similar as we thought. Can you do it, or should you try a little, or should I do?
I'll try, sir.
Okay, try. I'll give you 2 minutes. Just try and see if any problem happens.
Sir, am I audible?
Yes. Yes.
So if you say if Travis XC says that X travels in C class, so doesn't it mean that it cannot travel in any other class? It can only travel in C class.
No. It only says that X travels in C class. It doesn't say X travels in only C class.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
As you propose. It's a good exercise to also see that if you add here, this proposition says X travels in only C class. How do you encode it? So I'm saying that travel X is a proposition. Do not change this proposition. What I'm saying is actually, suppose I am given a proposition. Can you encode this statement? X travels in only one class. Universally, without C being 1 and 2. X travels in only or exactly one in one class. In exactly one class. We will show some. So just keep it in your mind to do a homework of encoding this statement. We will show an example just like this a little bit afterwards in tutorial. Okay, but I think this is straightforward, right? Fx and sx are just replaced by a travel x1 and travel x2. So everything is straightforward as we have shown in the class. Chalega, right?
Yes, sir.
Sir, the statement that X travels in exactly one class, sir, it will always be true. Like
no, I'm saying that no. Something is always true. It's in your mind, but if you have to encode without formulating the deduction, without answering the validity of the question, if you have to encode that everyone travels in exactly one class, how do you encode that? My question is, how do you encode?
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
you are answering the. Huh?
Do we know the number of classes beforehand? Like, is it question?
So there are interesting variations that if you do not know, that is one variation, right? If you do not know and assume, as you are assuming, assume 2 or 3 classes. So how can you encode this? Okay, these are interesting variations you can try out. We will show some examples just like this, and then it will be easier how to try this out. Okay, but in the original query that was made is this thing is clear, right? This doesn't make any differences to our derivations as well as the encoding to larger extent. Okay, shall we move? All right. So this is something that I already explained, but to re-emphasize, you can see that these two we have done. Either we use for all x there exists x in front of predicate symbols or in front of functional symbols. Right? So we quantify the variables of the predicate and the functional symbols. This is allowed, whereas we have shown that for all predicate or there exists function, this is not allowed if we have a predicate x or function x. So this is not allowed. So as per the definitions or the terminologies of the predicate of first order logic. Okay, that is the limitations that predicate logic allows. I hope we have digged a little bit on this from the higher order logic explanation. Okay. So whoever has raised this question, do you have anything else in your mind? Then we can discuss. Otherwise, I think it's the same question.
Yes, like I had a doubt. Like, is this because of the clauses or the rules of the predicate logic that we can't like express the symbols or quantify the symbols in
See,
words?
predicate logic is meant to only specify the computability aspect, the computable functions and their validity to reduce their validity of that. So every computable things or arguments can be expressed in predicate logic, right? So here, if you go for higher order logic, what I would say that it is a superset of what the predicate logic has to offer. Predicate logic has a restriction on that. That's all. And with that restriction, even with that restriction, predicate logic can specify every computable function. That's the only purpose till which the predicate logic boundary is extended.
Okay, sir. And like, how do we like verify or prove that predicate logic can express everything that can be computed?
That's a more deeper question. I mean, there is a proof that it does, but it's too involved, and I mean, for the scope of the course, we have not brought that. But if you are interested, you just search with this that proof of predicate logic can express every computable functions. You can. There is a definitive proof for that.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this is an interesting question. Actually, the fourth part of the lecture in this logic deals with this. That is not been shared with you yet. The next week we will share it. The first lecture will be that. So to give you, I mean, to just reduce your curiosity and give you a glimpses of it, one of the most interesting area where this is used is program verification. So program verification is nothing but, let me give you an example. Suppose you have a program, you have written a program which takes, let's say, two variables x and y and produces two variables as an output q and r. And suppose I have an input precondition of those variables saying that x greater than y greater than 0. Okay. And let's say the program computes, this is my quotient and this is my remainder. After we divide x by y. So therefore you can understand that the program demands as a post condition. So this is the precondition. The post condition, the program demands x should be equal to qy plus r, and r should be less than y. Agreed? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So see, these things actually these preconditions as well as the post conditions I am expressing in terms of propositional logic, isn't it? X greater than y and y greater than 0. So the propositional logic form, or rather I would say the extension of it is a predicate logic. We can say the predicates are x greater than y and greater than y0. This is also the predicate logic formulations we can use. So where this is a function which computes qy plus y r, and this is a predicate which makes the equality with x. Right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So therefore, every item, precondition and postcondition of the specification, rather, which we call it as a specification, can be encoded using predicate logic. Propositional logic is obviously a subset of predicate logic where we use the Boolean symbols. Now, to guarantee this specification through the program, what we need to do? Just think of this thing. What we need to ascertain here? We need to ascertain whether, given the precondition and the program, forget about how it is given. You know how this is given? This should imply the post condition. You know how this is given, right? These two are given using predicate logic, right? Isn't it? What does the program, what do you mean by verifying a program? We need to verify, given the precondition, can I reach to the post condition given the program in my hand, with respect to the program in my hand, right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now if this is the case, then see, your program has free input outputs, X and Y, right? And it produces deterministic outputs Q and R. So what I need to verify here is basically for all input X, for all input Y, can I produce an output Q? Can I produce a remainder R such that this happens? Yes or no? Interesting, right?
But sir, will this be done manually or on the computer?
Automatically. There is a branch in program verification which deals with all possible algorithms to do that. But I'm saying that the application of logic, this is basically called OR triplet. Because this is a triplet, precondition and program implies postcondition. This is a triplet nature of the thing. So now if you dig down that what is a program is, this is the next lecture, we'll dig it down. So a program can consist of multiple branches, if else branches in a flow, or it could have a loop and come back again, right? So this is the program basically. Starting from the input, you have to proceed through execution paths in the program, either looping, coming out, or through if else, or maybe or through direct statements. This is what a program structure is. Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
So now the next lecture will emphasize how can you verify how can you specify such kind of a verification logical format, and how can you verify symbolically through all possible execution paths in this program, I can reach from the precondition exactly what the postcondition is. Whoever has raised this question got a direct application in computer science?
Yes, sir.
So exactly, we have an application of logic lecture just following. Just wait for that. This thing, what I not mentioned here in details is the fact that this path, how does the program symbolically gets the different paths? So I need to prove that precondition and path 1 implies postcondition. I need to also do precondition and path 2 implies postcondition. All these things, how do I do? That is actually the next lecture. But this is how we encode the formulation of the program verification, using that for all input variables, I need to produce at least one output such that this happens. Then my program is correct. You have produced at least one output in such a way that the output is correct. The post condition, the specification is meeting. You are meeting the specification. So that's what the program verification says. Okay. We have these questions already listed. If you have any further questions in your mind or have popped up, you can ask directly.
Sir, can you explain that some engineers and that one, why shall we write and?
Okay, some engineers are contractors, right?
Yes, sir.
Let me just write that statement. The statement says, some engineers are contractors. For the time being, just try to think what the negation of the statement says. what does the negation in English of this? In English, what does the negation of this statement will mean? There, some engineers are contractors. Is it no? Let's see. Some engineers are contractors. Is the negation will say no engineers are contractors, or
some engineers are not contractors?
No, that you cannot say. See, some engineers are contractors, so some are true, some are false. So some engineers are not contractors is automatically is there, right?
Not all engineers are contractors.
Okay, not all engineers are contractors. Agreed, everybody?
Sir, it is the implication of the statement itself.
No. We'll gradually see. So see, some of you have pointed it out that how do we encode this? We need to understand. So I am saying that for the time being, let us also consider the negation of the statement. So this statement is equivalent if we have it not before it. Right?
All engineers are not contractors.
So sir, is it different from no engineers is contractor?
We will see. Gradually we will see everything. Now see, some engineers are contracted. So how do we encode it is there exists X. We will see everybody. I will take every one of your statement and do it. Engineers and contractor X. Now the question comes from the fact that this is why not this one. Right? Am I understood the question correctly?
Yes, sir.
To know this, we have to think that when this statement should be true, this statement should be true if engineer X and contractor X for some X is true. Right? Agreed or not?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
If you have an implication in between, then when this statement is true, this statement is true even if there are no engineers present. If we have implication, yes or no? If
Yes,
there
sir.
are no engineers in the set, then also this statement will be true because A implies B. If A is false, then the whole statement automatically becomes true. So, but this statement presents the fact that there are some engineers who are contracted. So it assumes by the English statement that there are some engineers in the set, right? So this is not a valid encoding, rather this is a valid encoding considering the truth or the decidability of it, of the statement.
So shouldn't we interpret as if there are some engineers, then they are, and some of them will be contractors?
No, but this statement says some engineers are contractors. So it assumes that there are already some engineers in your set. Suppose I tell you that some of your friends are good at maths. Then I inherently assume that you have friends, right?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it? That's the essence here. When I say some engineers are contractors, it implicitly means there are some engineers in your set at hand. But if you specify this using implies, then when you try to decide or try to make it valid or invalid, then automatically extra assumption comes into your encoding that there may be no engineers also in the set. And then also you are saying that some engineers are contractors are true. See, if I say some of your friends are good at maths, and if you have no friend, then that statement should never be true. Because if you have no friend, then there is not a chance of someone to be good at math. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
So if there are no engineers, there is not a chance that they will be contractors. So if there are no engineers, then it should be false. However, if you imply it, the verdict becomes the opposite, which is wrong, as per intention, as per the intent of the statement.
Sir?
Yes.
Sir, when we say that all contractors are not dependable, don't we assume that there at least are some contractors?
But if there, see, all contractors, when you say all contractors are dependable, you write it this way, right? All contractors are dependable. I expected this question, that then why this one? Okay, so the statement says all contractors are dependable. Now see here, just try to analyze by the same analogy, that when I say all contractors are dependable, then if there is no contractor, then this statement is vacuously true, because see here it's a reasoning about the whole set. If the whole set is missing, then there is no point of reasoning here. So no point of reasoning means you are in the same world where you started off, and the world is true. Your world is true unless you specify something to be false. On the contrary, here when you say some, it means that you want to specify in this world there are some engineers who are contractors. But here you don't want to assume in this world that there must be all contractors in the world present. But you want to assume that whoever present, if he is a contractor, then that in that world it is dependent. Okay.
Sir, will it be same as the actresses are graceful?
Yeah. I mean, that's the beauty of encoding, right? No matter how does the English statement differs, the encoding style has a fixed set of rules to do it, and it is more formalized and interpretable by your computing machine automatically. So that you can derive in automatic means by writing some programs. Okay. So those who are still a little bit wondering, that's why I tried to get a negation of it. You also try to negate this statement and then place a not. You will see the exact equivalence between this statement and this statement. You try to negate this statement, the English statement first, try to encode it and place a not over it. And you know that not, if there is a not for all x something, this not gets inside and this becomes there exists, right? You push it like that and you will see exactly the same thing. Okay, that's why I gave a clue that if you are in doubt that what should be there as an implication, just try to negate the statement and try to have a not on this. Whatever you make in both sides should be equivalent, right? But the basic intuition behind it is that some assumes that there is a set where engineers are present. As I have given an example, some of your friends are good at maths. All contractors assume a world itself to be true.
Sir, is it the negation of it that some engineers are contractors and not all engineers are contractors?
So the negation of the statements is that all engineers are not contractors, right? All engineers are not contractors. Some engineers are contractors. So all engineers are not contractors.
So sir, it is just the inherent part of it. It is not the negation.
No, that's why I put a negation. Na? The negation of this is equivalent to this statement.
So can't you say that no engineer is a contractor?
No, just let me simplify that again. What does the English negation of this? Some engineers are contractors.
No engineer is a contractor.
Or more simplified, I can say that all engineers are not contractors. No engineer is a contractor is same as all engineers are not contractors, isn't it?
No, sir.
Different, na? All engineers are not contractors, and no engineer is a contractor are different.
Yes, sir, they are different.
All engineers are not contractor, and no engineer is a contractor. How is it different?
Sir, if you say all engineers are not
let us encode it. See, all engineers are not contractors for all x.
So it means there might be engineers which are contractors, but not all of them. When we say no engineer,
and you are saying no engineers are contractors, right? So there exists x, engineer x, and contractor x. This doesn't happen. Isn't these two statements equivalent?
Sir, the above one is not all engineers. Sir, above one is all engineers are contract.
Not contractors. I put a not here. The first one, this one says all engineers are not contractors. The second says there exists an engineer who is, I mean, not all engineers are contractors. What do you say? Not there exists. What does the second statement you said is this? Yeah. So this one.
If we say no engineer, then negation of for all x, right?
These two are equivalent. Just try it out. Push this negation inside and simplify. These two are equivalent. The two statements that you said are equivalent.
Sir, I was saying
English they are not
negation of for all x, e of x, and like
these two are equivalent, isn't it? You just push this negation inside. What does it mean? This will be for all.
Yes, sir. They are equivalent.
This will be negation. So what does this mean? This is negation or this same thing? Just think it a little bit. I mean, write the verbal statement. Maybe that when we are talking with each other, maybe we are missing one, two things. That's why some confusion is arising. But if you logically write it by writing the English statement, you will get a sense that which are equal and which are not equal. And why are you?
Yes. Because I think they want to say that they want to put not outside and then say for all x, engineer of x, E of x implies contractor of x.
That is not equal. That is the negation of this statement. Definitely, that is not equal.
They want to put a negation outside this for all x.
If they say this one.
Yes. No, sir. No, not.
This is not.
Oh,
no, not here.
Yes, sir.
Now you know how the logic now how to check it. You can check it now. It means there exists x, not ex. Sorry, not will cancel because the inside is not ex or cx. So not will cancel. This is the case. So the pink one and the yellow ones are not equal, but the two yellow ones are equal.
Sir, the first pink one that you wrote is what you are writing in English, the blue statement.
So the first pink one that I wrote is basically C. Not all engineers are contractors.
Yes, sir.
Right? It's just a jugglery. I mean, you yourself can know it. You sit peacefully, write the English statement, and try to see what the formula is, and try to see the negation on what the formula is. If you can derive each other by negating each other, then you are correct. That's what my essence is. So to write this one, you write a negation and see what the formula is. If you can derive one from the other by putting a not before that, then you are correct. If you separately draft those two formulas and prove the equivalence by a negation in front of them, then obviously you are making in the right way, right direction. So that is a way to cross-check it when you write it in the exam or some in practical places. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Any other doubt? I mean, not only in this topic, but any other impromptu doubt that you have come to your mind overall?
Sir, I have a doubt on the previous tutorial exercise problem.
Okay, so just hold on. At the end, we might get 5 minutes. We will clarify. Eddie, right? I mean, we can do it that way.
Professor, what is the relation between the yellow and the pink ones?
No, these two are actually, these two are actually not related that way. These two are actually not related that way. Neither you can say the negation of this is this. Right?
Sir, could you read out the pink one in English?
The pink one in English, before putting the negation, is all engineers are contractors. After putting the negation, it will be not all engineers are contractors.
So shouldn't that be the same as all engineers are not contractors? Because that's what you said.
No. It means that all engineers are not contractors says that if A is an engineer, B is an engineer, C is an engineer, each of them is not contractor. But it says, if you simplify this formula, there exists something that is not a contractor. It means if A is not, but if B is yes and C is yes, then this is true. Agreed?
Okay. Understood.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Sir, can you read the second pink statement in English?
Second pink statement is the same as the first pink statement. In the second pink statement, it only says there exists an engineer who is not contractor, or some engineers are not contractors. Okay, some engineers are not contractors, which is same as stating that not all engineers are contractors.
So then I think the all engineers are not contractors is not the negative of some engineers are contractors. Because
No,
you are clumping all engineers.
Yeah, it is not. It is not. You are correct. It is not.
Yes, sir.
No. It is not. You are correct.
Yes, sir, that's what you are.
But the whole essence of this exercise, this argument that we are having is that you go on doing the negative of it. You encode that formula. Suppose this is your F0, you encode that. And then in exam or somewhere, you just try to prove the equivalence of this or the equivalence of this. If you are able to do so, then you are in the right track of encoding it. Agreed?
Yes, Professor, agreed.
Yeah. But it is very nice that you pointed out this point, that this is basically when you say there exist some engineers are not contractors, it is not saying that this is not equivalent to for all X, engineers X implies not contractor X. For all X, engineers X implies not contractor X.
Oh, yes.
Basically the all crosses. All engineers are not contractors. Every one of them is not a contractor. But there exists some engineer who is not a contractor, allows that some are not, but some can be. That's the difference. Interesting but intricate. I mean, if you sit with a piece of paper, you will get more fun to it.
Professor, it just seems like the English itself seems very imprecise.
Exactly, ambiguous, very ambiguous. That's why the whole
where you place the emphasis. Like if the tone, even the tone can change the logic sometimes. If I'm not wrong.
Why natural language processing is such a vast topic, and to formalize a formula from a natural language is not something to be directly automated till now.
Okay.
There is manual thought process going on.
So the last statement is all engineers are not contractors.
Not contractors.
Okay. And
it is not equivalent to some engineers are not contractors.
It is the negation of some engineers are not contractors.
No. How can you say that? Some engineers are not contracted is this one. No? Some engineers are not contracted is this one. The negation of this is only of this formula, and which is where this is missing. So these two are not equal.
Sir, I'm saying that second and third are negation of each other.
Huh? Second and third are negation of each other. This one and this one.
Oh, sorry, sir.
No.
Yes.
This one is this whole statement with the negation here. This one is equivalent to this. Whereas this one is saying for all X engineer is not contractor is, which is not equivalent to any one of them. These two are, that's why I said these two are not equivalent to each other. This or this, these two are equivalent. His set is totally not equivalent. The above one and the below one is not equivalent. The reason your friend pointed out, see, all engineers are not contractors means everyone. If this is your engineer set, everyone is a cross. But some engineers are not contractor means there are some engineers who are not, but others can be, still making the whole set in.
But sir, some can also not be contractors.
What do you mean? Some can, some are yes, some are not. That's what some are yes.
If you write the first statement, then it will also be true when there is no contractor.
Why?
Sir, you are saying that it is not true for all engineers are contractor.
This statement you are saying.
No, sir, above it.
The same. Both are same. As I'm saying multiple times, both statements are equivalent.
Yes, sir.
The above one and the below one.
Sir, I am having a doubt in it. Yeah. The above one is true when there is no engineer, which is a contractor.
Arey, come on. These two are equivalent. Then how can the above one be true and the below one be false? Okay, just for the sake, you just take your time and sit with the piece of paper and try to see the domain and try to see. And if you find any counter example, and just please mail me, I will take it offline. Why I want to take it offline is just to give you time to think on this.
So I have a question like there exists X, engineer X implies contractor X. How do you write this in English?
There exists X, engineers X
implies contractor X.
Yeah, so
how do you write this in English?
I will just say that if there is, if there is some engineers, then those engineers must be contractors.
Okay.
You just put a engineer set as an if.
Okay.
Not assume that it is always there.
Okay.
Professor, I have a question in this orange one.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say there is a set of people. Some of them are engineers. Some of them are not engineers.
Yes.
Now, let's say all the engineers are not contractors.
Okay, some of them are engineers or some of them are not. Say someone is not and some of them are engineers. So this is my set.
Now, in this set, all the engineers, none of them are contractors.
None of them are contractors. Okay.
So the implication will be false for all the engineers. That engineer implies contractor will be always false. But because of vacuous truth, the people who are not engineers, because they failed the condition for being E of X, that statement will become vacuously true. That
for these cases, yes.
The people who are not engineers, that statement will be vacuously true. So that does exist X, which satisfies the statement, but it's not the intent of the English sentence.
No, but so in that case, you have to also write the intent. That's why, as you rightly pointed out, the intent of the English may be sometimes ambiguous. In that case, you have to write that there are, in this engineer set, you have to also write there are some engineers and some not engineers, and have to encode that along with it. Then automatically.
So how do you modify this orange to accommodate that?
Yeah, with that, I will just try to encode that there are some engineers and some non-engineers. If you try to encode this statement along with that. But you say, and you try to encode there are some engineers and some non-engineers.
So, but that's the domain, sir. Like we can separately mention who.
But here, this statement, if you specify, what I suggested is, if there are some engineers, then those engineers are contractors. So this automatically qualifies that if there are some engineers, then those engineers, if they are contractors, I am okay. If some of them is not a contractor, then I am gone. This is false. Okay. But your proposition is that, see, this part then, this part of this set is immaterial to my judgment, to my decision.
So how do you encode that, sir?
No. So see, the part that is immaterial to my judgment, as per the predicate logic or propositional logic fundamentals, it says that the world that is immaterial remains true.
So
you ignore that word, assuming.
Is there a way to falsify that part of the world?
Yeah, to falsify it, you have to explicitly put some conditions. That's what I said.
We can put explicitly and engineer X.
Yes,
so that
and engineer X. That's what explicitly you have to put. In this world, there are some engineers or there are not some engineers.
That will just make this statement the first statement. Some engineers are contractors.
Exactly.
Then these will be equivalent.
Exactly. This statement, and you put the engineers X here. Okay. Then these two statements are equal. Exactly.
Okay.
That's the beauty. That's the jugglery of the thing. See, why this statement is different than the previous statement? Because you are assuming there are some engineers in the set. When you put the assumption inside, this will be logically equivalent because we cannot refute the logic, right? As I have shown to you, active voice and passive voice are not mathematically equivalent, right? You remember, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So you cannot refute the logic. So then it will be.
Sir? So finally, can I conclude this way? The negation of a proposition is best determined from negating the mathematical statement other than the English statement.
No, actually, so whatever you do in decision making, you always start with the mathematical statement, not always with the English statement. But here,
if there is a mathematical statement.
Yeah. Here the only suggestion I made that if you are unsure about as to whether I have done correct or wrong, you just try to meticulously flip this English statement and try to encode it and try to make an equivalence between the negation of that with your original one. If they both match, then you have perfectly coded. Just for your satisfiability check of correctness. Nothing else. But whenever you deduce, it is better to deduce from the mathematical encoded statement, not from the English in your mind. Because as your friends and you already know that English are grossly ambiguous.
So finally, what's the answer for that? What is the negation of that statement? Some engineers are contractors.
Now you think so many discussions.
No engineer is a contractor.
No, now this is your turn. So many discussions after that. You cannot ask this.
Yes, sir. It should be no engineer is a contractor, right?
All engineers are not contractors.
I mean, both are same. All engineers are not contractors and no engineers are contractors.
Some engineers, yeah, both the same. That's what I shown in the yellow part, no? Bottom.
And sir, also like in this orange statement, sir, if we have some X that is not contractor, then doesn't that imply that it cannot also be an engineer?
Yeah, it's a contrapositive. You are telling the contrapositive thing. It is always the case. A implies B is equivalent to not B implies not A.
Yes, sir. So, sir, then how we encode it in English, like when we say that there are some engineers who are contractors. So, if someone is not contractor, then he or she cannot be engineer.
How do you encode means? So you encode it in the other way. So if you say that if A then B, you encode if not B then not A. Whatever be the statement results.
So the most appropriate to use here it's and now, like we used in the yellow part, instead of imply.
No. The whole no. We discussed many things about that, right? Yes. Why do we use implication for all? Why do we use and for their use?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I would suggest. I mean, all of these things are coming because you just sit with some query and flip it and have some jugglery. I mean, it's not very difficult. I mean, you are there. You are just not reaching to the point because you need some free time to explore this. All the concepts are clear. I mean, whatever you are saying is correct. Maybe in the contrapositive way or something else. Someone is saying the negations and all. Okay, just have it in a piece of paper and try. Okay. So let us have a 2-3 minutes pause. Then we'll start for the tutorial. Okay, so let me float the problem so that you could just start looking for it. So here I want to know whether the first statement or the second statement all are tautology, unsatisfiable or not. I hope you remember that if it is a valid or a tautology, it means that every interpretation results this statement to be true. If it is unsatisfiable, meaning every interpretation should result false. Neither means some are true, some are false. It is also called invalid and satisfiable. So let us start doing. You just try to do it in your notebook as well. What do you feel about the first one?
So the statement says what happens when there is smoke. We don't know what happens when there's no smoke.
No. I'm saying that the whole statement is given to you. So you need to find...
I'm just breaking it into two parts and trying to see if it actually implies that. So if
why not we mathematically go on deriving it, whether it goes to true or false or something?
Sir, not necessarily true.
It's neither.
Neither, right?
Neither means yes.
Can you give an instance of smoke and fire where this formula is true and an instance of smoke and fire where this formula is false? Can you give it?
If smoke is true and fire is true, then this thing is true. But if smoke is false and fire is true, then this thing doesn't hold.
Smoke is false and fire is true, then this thing doesn't hold. Everybody is okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so since you need to prove that it is neither valid nor unsatisfiable, just look at the way I give it, just two counter examples. This proves that it cannot be unsatisfiable. This proves that it cannot be valid. So neither. So it means that it is satisfiable and it means that it is invalid. Okay. Second one. Everybody please do it. I mean, these are not very difficult. You just go on doing it. It will also help you out to clarify more and more.
So I have a question. Do you use this perpendicular sign for false?
Usually we use it. I mean, if you want, you can use it. Okay. We use this for contradiction. Usually this means contradiction and this means tautology. I mean, we use this. I mean, it's not a hard and fast rule. You can use T and F as well.
Okay, sir.
Not an issue. Actually, the old logicians started using this one from Aristotle and others. Second one, valid, unsatisfiable, or neither.
It's valid. It's a tautology.
Neither, sir.
So you are proving it by expanding, right? Just correct me if I am wrong. Now you see you have to distribute this OR with respect to this AND. So you can say smoke and this one. So you can have added smoke with this. And not fire or hold this one. So obviously there is a smoke, not smoke inside it, and there is a not fire and fire inside it. Right? Smoke or not smoke or whatever it is, and not fire or whatever it is, it ends with the fire. I just distributed this all inside. So due to this, it becomes true, and due to fire and not fire, it becomes true. Therefore, it's a valid or a tautology. Chalega? Okay?
Yes, sir.
So is there a way to, without like expanding it fully, just the right hand side for the right hand side of B? Is there a way to simply convert that into smoke implies fire?
No. It cannot be. See, it is always not the case that the right hand side should be invoked into smoke and fire, but rather what you could usually do is this is your F1 and this is your F2. You want to prove F1 implies F2 to be true.
Or we can convert F1 into F2. So we can say
smoke implies... or the other way, F1 and not F2. This should be falsification. See, the same thing.
Yes, sir. So, but here it seems like we're expanding it. So what I wanted to do was, I didn't want to expand. I just wanted to convert either side of the expression into the into the other. So
yeah, but usually see what happens if you take only one side of the expression. For example, the F2 side here. Here, the presence of heat will not make you to do so. Then what do you do?
The presence of heat. Yeah, okay, so let's check the other side, sir. Okay, F2 is problematic. Take F1 here.
Yeah, and try to inject heat here.
Yeah. Try to inject heat to this.
Yeah, that obviously is the case because smoke implies fire. If A implies B, that means A and C also implies C.
Yes.
Because it is restricting it more, A and C.
Yes, sir. Yes, that's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
That's say, but I mean, rather than saying it in terms of argumentative way, it is better to derive it, right? I mean, the more because why I am saying these two rules are usually followed. You will know it is called resolution reputation. You have to encode it in your computer so that computer automatically doesn't. Right? There is no manual intervention to do that. Now, if you try to inject heat here and try to expand like this, there could be many other possibilities which computer may sense to inject.
Okay, so we're basically converting it to like a standard form.
Yes, standard form. So that, and the next exercise will exactly point to that. Yeah. How do you deduce the last one? So this means that this is formula 1, this is formula 2, this is formula 3, this is formula 4, this is formula 5, and this is formula 6, and this is my goal. And I have to prove that F1 and F2 and up to F6 implies code. You know that I have to prove that this is a tautology, or in the other way you can prove that F1 and F6 and not G is falsification. Just I put a negation of everything. This will be any one of it. Or we can just try to prove this one by using our inferencing system of modus ponens, modus tollens, all these things that we have known. So can you say which formula first we combine to reduce the variables and go ahead?
F1 and F2.
F1 and F2 will just reduce, it will never reduce a variable, right? The essence of reduction is gradually you move on reducing set of variables. F1 and F2.
So we know that when we are double negation, which means that we can replace B wherever Q is.
We can replace P wherever Q is.
No, sir. Q and B are equivalent. It says that Q, if and only B. So wherever there is Q, we can replace it with B.
But using the, see, whatever you are telling is absolutely correct. But think from a computer perspective. It's not the case that mathematical arguments, just like human beings, computer can reason about. It should follow strict rules that you have embedded into it.
So then let's just decompose the if condition. I mean, if then condition.
What if from here, what does it result?
F3
not S and not.
So see, F3 says that it is S as well as U, not S as well as not U. This will deduce from F3. Now, if you take any one of them with F4, see, this is how the computer will think. So these are two different clauses it formed. Let's say C1 and C2. Now F4 and C2. What does it result?
Which is not T.
Not T. How? Because computer has the rule called modus tollens. Right? This is the way I want to go. Now.
Okay, so we know not T.
And we know not S and we know not U.
So now in F2 it says S or T, but we know not T. So
we know not T, not S. We know not S as well.
Also not S or not V, so R, not R.
Not. Correct. Then, if you know not R, which will simplify most?
Not of F1. The LHS of F1.
F1 and R. How does it simplify?
Not R implies that not of not P or
P and not Q. So since it's an AND, I will say that these are two separate clauses. This is C3 and this is C4.
So collect all the clauses now so that.
No. Gradually we will do. See, computer will do in a pairwise manner. There is no other way. Look at F5. Look at F5. And what does not Q and F5 means?
We know not Q, so not P.
Not P.
Not P. Absolutely. Now look at C3, that is P and F6. What does it result?
Left side of F6 should be false.
What does it result?
But we don't know anything about W right now. So we know not P.
No. I just want to reduce one variable here. I can reduce the P outside here. I can make it.
P is true. We know P is true.
Modus tollens. Apply modus tollens here.
Yeah. So F6 should be false.
Not V or W, and so it's a separate clause V or
not W.
So these are again two clauses C5, C6, right?
But we know not V.
Yeah. So C6 and not V. What does it result?
So we know V or not W.
And there is a not V.
Not W.
Also, not W should be true.
Not W.
We are getting it, right? So see the steps. I mean, computer will just try to look for your formula and its own presented inferencing rules, and it will move ahead with the steps. Agreed?
Sir.
Now, just one more point that I not told in the lecture. All these rules you see modus ponens. What is modus ponens? AB, if A is true, I say B is true. What actually?
So do we need to remember the names of all these things?
Do we?
Do we need to remember the Latin names of all these rules?
No, absolutely not. So this says, I mean, these are very popular. That's why I remember. A implies B and A says B. So actually what computer does, it simplifies every formula with not, or, and make it into a conjunctive normal form. It makes it as close as possible and make it into a conjunctive normal form, where conjunctive normal form is nothing, but you have these clauses where each of them can have disjunctions. So effectively you are doing not A or B, and you have A or false. Usually there is only one rule computer remembers. Computer remembers A or B, not A or C, will result B or C. This is the only rule. This is called resolution rule. This is the only rule computer has to encode if you simplify everything and give it to computer. I mean, not give it to computer. Computer simplifies everything by removing the implication, by putting the negation as close to the variable as possible and making it conjunctive normal.
Professor, how did we know that that was the only rule that was necessary for this sort of complete?
The same thing, how do you know the computer will function? There is a proof that resolution refutation in propositional logic is sound and complete. If you apply this rule, it is sound and no, not right here in this, because logic is a part of it. It's not a logic course as a whole, but this resolution and going through and proving certain thing, refutation in propositional logic is sound and complete. So any rule you apply, any rule, the modus tollens, you apply modus tollens, A implies B, not B. What do you do here? A implies B is not A or B, not B is nothing but false or not B. What does it result? Not A. See, not A or false is not A, this rule. This thing results B or false, same rule. Only one rule if you simplify. Okay, this is something I have not told you, but it is not relevant. If you can apply through your logical deduction and derive the clauses, it is done. I mean, otherwise, you try to prove the falsification, which is refutation, by this resolution after simplifying the formula into conjunctive normal form.
So, Professor, so there's a standard method for solving this, which is convert everything to CNF.
First make it implication free form, then make it negation normal form. Negation normal form means, suppose I have a not P or Q, I push the negation as inside as possible. So not P and not Q. Okay. This is negation normal form. Then you make it a conjunctive normal form by distributing X or Y or Z, then W or Q, like that. Each is a disjunction conjuncted by the clauses. These are clauses. Now, once you form that, so each of the clauses, a pair of clauses, you check for a pair of clauses. So there are n square number of checks if there are n clauses, and try to apply wherever it is.
Professor, how will you distribute it? Because if inside it is disjunctive, how will you distribute it over conjunctive? So because then
suppose you have A and B or C. How do you distribute? You distribute A or B and C.
Okay, now it makes sense. Yeah, yes.
Yeah, this is the only rule to distribute, right? A or B and A or C.
So this will result in a conjunctive form finally.
Yes, but this will be conjunctive normal form. These are clauses which are conjunctions of the clauses. And then when you have conjunctive normal form, you apply resolutions and finally reach a refutation of the whole formula, this formula.
So, but here in the green and orange part, so here you're distributing over the disjunctive part. Sorry, conjunctive part. You're distributing it over the conjunctive part. So then you'll get bunch of ors instead of bunch of ands.
No. See, I want to refute, falsify this formula. This formula is set of clauses, right? Conjunctions, not of G, remember.
Okay.
So if you want to refute, that means any pair will give you a false, the whole formula is false.
Yes.
That's okay.
Yes, sir.
Sir? Sir, while solving at the last we got C5 and C6. For some reason, not in this case, sir, but for some reason.
Yeah, for some reasons, if you see, this is sound and complete because if there is a validity way to found the formula to be valid or let's say unsatisfiable, it will get it. If there is not, then going on creating new clauses will saturate at a point where you will not generate any further new clause. Okay, then you stop.
No, sir, I was asking, while solving with C5 and C6, we got W to be true in one and W to be false in other. Then what shall we conclude?
Oh, then it is a contradiction. See, whatever you get is a conjunction. So this is C1 is true, C2 is true, C3 is true, C4 is true. All of them are true. So somewhere you get not W and somewhere you get a W. So those are conjunctions. So that means it is actually false.
Okay.
Professor, would it be possible to encode all of this as 1 zeros and in terms of linear equations?
See, I mean, the thing is that usually whatever you do has a duality. The linear equations, optimizations, the satisfiability has a duality at the end. And finally, it's all of them, you will later find out that these are something hard problems in computation. So you have to, in the worst case, exhaustively enumerate every possibility. Okay. So, I mean, whatever you do, you are not computationally doing any benefits. Only that's an alternative way of solving.
So, Professor, my idea was that if we are able, so if there are products of terms, then it won't be linear anymore, so we can't simplify it. Yes, understood.
Okay, so for the sake of time, let me move on. So I am not encoding this one because this is the simple encoding and you can try the logical deduction as well. It's simple because if the scarcity of the commodity develops, then the price rises. The scarcity of the commodity develops, price rises. If there is a change in the government, suppose this is a change in the government, then fear scale controls will not be continued. So you just encode this one and try to have a logical deduction of the final statement. Okay, I hope you can do it. It's simple in the propositional logic. So just let me move ahead. If you face any problem, you just drop me a mail. It's not a problem. So let us try to prove this. This is equivalent to the right. It is better the right one is more expanded to start with the right side and come down to the left side. Since both are bounded by for all x quantifiers, all the x's here. You can take that for all x at the beginning and can club all of them, right? Isn't it? Everyone for all x, and the same predicates are inside px, qx, and rx. So obviously the argument domains has to be the same for all x. Now what does this formula simplifies to? Just go ahead with the simplification rules that you know. What does the other formula? Right? Now, what can you say from this? Let's say that this is a common term which is distributed with respect to OR and ANDs. So what can you do? You can have not px, right? You can have not px or not qx or rx, right? And not rx or qx. Yes or no? These two are the same.
Yes, sir.
So what does this mean and what does this mean? Isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Same for this one. What does these two mean?
The double implication.
Now look at this or the double implication. Aren't we getting the first one?
Yes, sir.
I followed one of your friend's logic and he was telling that to start from something and reduce or something. That's it. Now, I mean, as part of a homework, you try to English statement wise try to encode and reason whether these two means the same. Okay, that is a homework. Okay, if you try to write an English statement from here, does it mean the same? You try to figure out by writing in your notebook. That is, this is how we have shown mathematically, but the English wise analogy will also make equivalence, right? That you try to think as a homework. Should we proceed? Everybody is with me. Everybody could derive this. I have made some of the steps as sketches in between. Okay. Now this one, something that we thought about doing that, how do we encode at least and all. Suppose we need, I am giving you two predicates. Sometimes you need to also think of which predicates would suffice to write these. Let us try to write these statements, encode these statements. First one, anybody would like to volunteer? There is at least one person who loves me. At least one person, so something x should exist. And I am assuming that x is a person here. So because it's a one statement, I do not have to write that x is a person. Who loves me? So love x comma me. Is it correct, everybody?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now tell me the second one. There is exactly one person who loves me. First of all, let us think a bit. I mean, rather than writing and then thinking, let us think a bit. What does it mean? There is exactly one person. First of all, it should be at least one person. It means that at least one plus no one else than that person. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
That is exactly one. At least one person loves Mary and not anyone else do not love. except that person.
So we can say for y not equal to x, they don't love me.
Yeah, there is a clause. There is a clause. That's why I made this clause. There is a predicate. Sorry, not a clause. It's a predicate.
If someone else loves.
No, first of all, at least one we have already done. So there exists an x. Love x, Mary. Now this part. No one else other than that x.
And diff of x comma y implies that
no,
y
wait.
For all y.
We need to have for all y.
So for all y, diff of x comma y implies that y does not love Mary.
Due to the scope, somebody in the earlier class told me that we should maintain the scope that way. Everybody getting it? The right hand side part says no one else other than that x loves me.
So if we put the for all y outside of that love is
absolutely,
what happens?
Absolutely, you can put for all x here outside because this vary is not dependent on y, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, sir.
But you cannot put for all x here, right? This is not done. It changes the meaning. I have shown you in the in some of the active passive voices and examples, right? Everybody loves someone. You cannot interchange for all and there exist positions arbitrarily. C. There is at most one person who loves Mary. So, to simplify, what does at most one means?
There exists no one or exactly one.
Exactly one plus no one. So we have already B as the exactly one. And for the no one, what do? No one loves Mary.
For all x, not love x, Mary.
Mary. Now, if you understand these three factors, at least, exactly, and at most, now you can see many.
Is it and or?
There be?
Yes, sir.
Or.
Yes, should that be?
Yeah, or. You are correct. This should be. This is all plus. So here also, this is and. I mean, to make it more clear, let me write here also. This is and this is or. Because exactly one means at least one and no other. But at most means either one or none. So due to this nature of expression, I would like to say you can now have a sense that every computational thing can be expressed, right? I can express quantification. So as a homework, you can try to encode that there are exactly 3 persons who love Mary. As a homework, you can try this.
Sir, for the point C, can we do the following? We just write what we have written in point B and then just change the and to implies. So for all x, love x comma Mary implies love. For all y different from x comma y implies not.
So let us come to the English. What do you want to do? You want to state that if there is one person who loves Mary, then there is no other person who will love Mary, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, if it says that if there is one person who loves Mary and there is no other person, I think whatever you are saying as of now, I can see both of them are equivalent, as you are saying. Just try to figure out the equivalence after writing it in a plain piece of paper. Okay.
Okay, sir.
Whatever you are saying, both of them are equivalent, not these two. Whatever you are saying and the C1. Just try to write it. You will get it.
Yes, sir.
But sir, if we go with that statement, there may be a case when no one loves Mary.
Just see now, just see. I mean, I could not foresee unless we write it. I just leave it to you. Since we have a lot of discussion on that, I hope you are able to get it. So just try this one. I told this one. Now you can see I can quantify numbers as well, right? 1, 2, exactly 2, at least 2. So this gives a sense that yes, maybe all computable functions can be expressed, right? This is one simple example just to show you a variations of it. This is nothing but I encoded for you. You have to tell me the crisp English statement, the shortest, idiomatic, concise English statement. What do you do?
All unmarried men are unhappy.
Everybody is with your friend?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. This is correct. I mean, I'm not saying the correctness of the statement, but I'm saying whatever you encoded is correct. Written in the English statement anyway. Okay. Now one of the predicate logic deductions. So let us try to encode. So first we need to read this statement and try to figure out our predicates. No man who is a candidate will be defeated if he is a good campaigner. So obviously we need a predicate called candidate X. X is a candidate. Defeated X. X is defeated. He is a good campaigner. Campaigning X. X is a campaigner. Any man who runs for office is a candidate. So obviously another new predicate, office X. X runs office. Then there is no new here. Every man is elected. Yeah, here there is a new thing. Any candidate who is not defeated will be elected. So X is elected is a new predicate. And there is none. So this is the first pass. Agreed or not? These 5 are my predicates that I will use to encode this statement.
Professor, I have a question. When it says any man who runs for office is a candidate, does it also mean that the definition of candidate is someone who runs for office? Is it a double implication?
We will come. So let us come one by one. Right now I am only talking about identifying predicates. When we come at encoding, then let us try to understand your question. Okay. So right now, the first step is upon reading the statement, you try to figure out your basic predicates that you need to encode. Do you think that these 5 is sufficient or should we need more? Okay.
So it says any candidate, and in that sentence it doesn't say if the candidate is man or not. So do we need something?
Yeah. So okay. Wait. Let me change it. I mean, you pointed a good thing. Let's say any person is better. No person. Okay. So let the just man be generic. It could be woman also. Sorry for that. Okay. It's every this man you just change it with person. Okay, so let us encode the first one. What will be the F1? No person who is a candidate will be elected if he is a good campaigner. Will be defeated, sorry. So it means that no person who is a candidate will be defeated if he is a good campaigner. That means someone who is a candidate and also a good campaigner will never be defeated. Right? Yes or no?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So someone who is a candidate and yes
implies a not defeat.
Yes. If you are thinking about exactly encoding this one, you can do it. It will come, I mean, in this form only. I mean, if you say that, if you just want to negate the no, there exists a person who is a candidate will be defeated and then negate the no, it will come in the same format as we already discussed. So it internally says that if someone is a candidate and a good campaigner, he will not be defeated. Now coming to the statement. Any person who runs for office is a candidate. That means any person, that means whoever be the person, if he runs for the office, he's a candidate. So for all person who runs for office, that means he's a candidate. Okay, now somebody has a question there. Tell me. Just come again. Whatever you questioned earlier when I wrote the. Okay, let me move on. Third one, anyone want to volunteer? Any candidate who is not defeated will be elected.
Similar to F1.
See,
candidate and not defeated.
So any candidate, so therefore, for any case.
For all.
This is for all X candidate.
Candidate.
And not defeated.
Not defeated.
Not defeated implies
elected. Right. Fourth one, somebody want to volunteer. Every person.
Sir, can't. Sir, excuse me, sir. Sir, in F3 can't we exchange elected candidate and defeated, like election and defeated?
Which one? This previous statement. Any candidate who is not defeated will be elected.
Like I mean, if a candidate is elected, it means that he is not defeated.
No. That is the reverse thing you are telling. That is the inverse thing you are telling. I am not saying that. I am saying any candidate who is not defeated will be elected. The election is the consequent. I mean, election is the effect. The cause is the candidate is not defeated. The effect is elected.
Okay.
Sir, but if candidate is defeated, then obviously he will not be elected.
No. Don't think whatever is it comes in your mind. Just think whatever is written in the statement. See, I can also encode in predicate logic that I can walk to moon. Right? Somebody can walk to moon. Can you encode or not? So now if you tell that no sir, it can't be, so that is not the case. The statement says any candidate who is not defeated will be elected. So any candidate and not defeated, it means the effect is he is elected. Agreed?
Yes, sir.
Every person who is elected is a good campaigner. Every person who is elected is a good campaigner. The goal, therefore, tell me now this one. Any person who runs for office will be elected if and only if he is a good campaigner. So first of all, any person, whoever it is, any person who runs for office will be elected
and
will be elected if and only if he is a good campaigner. Okay. Now let us try to dig down and see whether this is correct or not. What does this statement say? It has two things in it. Right? Any person who runs for office, if he is also a good campaigner, then he is elected. Any person who runs for office, if he is elected, then he is a good campaigner. So effectively, G boils down to saying G1 and G2, where my G1 is for all X, office X, and elect X implies he is a good campaigner. And this says for all X, office X and a good campaigner means he is elected. Right? This statement says that any person who runs for office will be elected if and only if he is a good campaigner. That means any person who runs for office and he is a good campaigner, therefore he is elected. Or any person who runs for office and is elected is obviously a good campaigner, if and only. Now, exactly if you see that G1 and G2 is nothing but equivalent to this one. These two are equivalent. Whatever I wrote here. See, just why these two are equivalent, you know? Can you guess? You have already proved it. Today's tutorial. Can you guess? Check this one. Px and Qx implies Rx. Px and Rx implies Qx. So Px, Qx if and only if Rx. See this one. Px implies Qx if and only if Rx. Px and Qx implies Rx. Px and Rx implies Qx. ठीक है?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now the question is that we need to prove this and this to be true to be more simplified instance. So what we will do, we will first assume this. So everything is for all. So it is immaterial to have a for all. So the thing is that you need to remember one thing, that if there exists x, then for that x, if it is not bounded by anyone, if suppose there is a predicate p of x, then you can simplify it by writing p of a. For some a it holds, that some a which can be a candidate for x. Now if there is a for all y, there exists x, px2. So this is pxy. How do you simplify it? You simplify, see this x for all y, there exists an x. So this x is dependent on the y you choose, right? Chosen an y, I get an x. Choose a different y, I have a different x. For all y, there exists an x, right? So therefore, here what you do, you give x as a function of y and replace this. So for all x, you can just eliminate. There exists x. There are two rules to replacing. If there is not bounded by any other quantifier, for all quantifier, then you can just replace it with a constant, which is a representative x. If it is bounded, at least it is a dependent on the previous quantification, then you have to make the dependence in terms of function. That's how you can replace it. Okay, so here it will be replaced by for all y, pfy.
Professor, in these situations, it's generally understood that there exists x, that x is probably dependent on y, right? Like in most situations.
Not probably. When you write this way, the logical sense makes it to make it dependent, right? For all y, there exists x. What do you mean? That for every y, there is some x.
But if you bracket it around,
no, bracket is the same. You want to bracket it here?
Yes, sir. So if you bracket
that remains the same.
It's obvious that the x has to be dependent on y.
No, even if you do not bracket, the association is nearby. Yeah. That's it.
So, but what is the purpose of writing f of y?
No, I want to simplify this. I will apply the same principle that I apply for the predicate logic, propositional logic. But here the quantifiers plays a spoil sport. I need to remove the quantifiers. That's the thing.
Yes, understood.
That's why for there exists and for all I need to remove. For all I can directly remove because that x is itself a candidate by saying everything. But for there exists, either I remove by a constant representing x or I remove by a function which is dependent on a bounded variable. And make it simplified without quantifying.
Sir, if it is there exists x for all y, then both x and y are independent.
Wait. Good question. I'm saying there exists x for all y, pxy. Now this x is not dependent on anyone. To remove this one, you need to just have a variable representative. Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's it. If something is not dependent, then just a variable representative. If something is dependent, then have a function representative because it depends on this y, so it's a function of y that I can replace. So function of y has a return value. It's a constant value at the end, but it's dependent on every quantifier here. Just consider it as a computing function, your C function. It returns some value, some integer, some constant. But still you have to make it with respect to its input. Okay, now all of these are done for all. So this is a simple case. And what you have to do that starting from assuming these all are true and having this thing in our hand, can I derive this one is the question. Now you can see that we can do it because if office x and elect x is true, then office x is true means candidate x is true because this is an implication. Yes or no? Are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I am saying that this and this are true. So office x and this one says candidate x is true. Now candidate x what I did, elect x is true. Yeah, candidate x and now elect x says camp x is true. Okay, office x says candidate x is true, elect x says camp x is true. Office x and elect x says candidate and camp is true. Okay, Candidate and camp says not defeat is true. Not defeat and candidate says elect X is true. Sorry. Just a second. I make a mistake here. Here the only thing, see, elect X implies candidate X. Only this formula suffices to make this true. Because office X and elect X reduces the space of elect X much more. Whole elect X imply camp X. So those elect X who are also officers must imply camp X. Right? G1, I mean the antecedent of G1 and F4 implies camp X. Agreed or not?
Yes, sir.
Sir, can you repeat?
I'm saying that what we have to prove here is that F1, F2, F3, F4, and I am saying it the antecedent of G1, this will imply camp X. Now, what is the antecedent of G1? It says office X and elect X is true. So from elect X and F4, I get camp X to be true. Okay. So I get the second one is the tricky one that I was framing in my mind. Office X and camp X implies elect X. So when office X and camp X are true,
so in the first one, why are we not considering office X?
Because elect X is a higher set. If elect X happens, then automatically camp X happens. If you restrict it with an AND with office X, it becomes a subset of elect X. So if the higher set attains camp X, then the subset will automatically attain camp X. Trivially, right?
No, sir, but in the form of the propositions that we have made.
No, because these are two different clauses. Now, how do we? If you remember the predicate logic derivations, we have different clauses when there are endings, like this. So here also, these are two different clauses, C1 and C2. I reduce by C2 and F4 and make a camp X. C2 and F4 by modus ponens. Elect X implies camp X and elect X gives rise to camp X. Get it?
Okay, sir.
The second one, you see, you will feel more tricky things. Office X and camp X would imply elect X. So if office X is true, then candidate X is true. Right? Now candidate X and camp X, because due to this clause, camp X means not defeated X is true. Now not defeated X with candidate X implies elect X to be. Mil gaya? Okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the summary is, first of all, write this encoding formula. You may simplify the inside equation, because as we know that if you simplify the inside equation, only two rules you need to know. I mean, only one rule you need to know, which is the resolution rule, which you need to apply. Even if you do not simplify, you can eliminate the quantifier for all as it is without doing anything to the variables. You eliminate the there exists quantifier depending on if it is dependent or not dependent. If it is not dependent, then it's a free thing. You can assume some representative A for which this is true and do it. If it is dependent, then you have to invoke a function to that. Apart from that, just one more thing you need to remember. Sometimes if there is, so since the quantifiers are eliminated, the formulas become clubbed together. So sometimes it happens that two different formulas have the same quantifier variable. In that case, you must have to rename the variable to make it different. Okay, I can have, so to give you a small example, I can have for all x px and there exists x qxy. So it is better to have a rename of this variable. Okay, because this first x and the second x is nothing to do with what px wants and what qx wants. Okay, it makes things easier to reduce. And the rest, when you reduce the quantifier and make this streamline, the rest thing follows by either the logical inferencing rules or the simple one rule that I have shown. You reduce, you resolve gradually. Okay, so that's it. The solutions that we discussed, we will also upload a little bit of hints of those solutions along with it. Only this thing I have not done. It is simple. I hope if you know the deduction and encoding of propositional logic, you can do it. Just I leave it as a homework. Okay. Any other questions? We are done with today's tutorial.
Sir, is it possible to upload these slides?
Yes, sir. Please.
No. These derivations we will be uploading it in the web page in a proper format. Don't worry. And there are also more problems we will give so that you write your hands. Okay, whatever we derive, we will upload.
And sir, I have a doubt in previous tutorials. Additional question.
Yeah. You please let me stop sharing and you please go ahead. I think Professor Eddie, you are here, right?
Yeah, tell.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Question 7, sir.
Question 7. Just let me go.
Did I stop the recording for today? Or should we go ahead?
No, sir.
Go ahead.
Okay, question 7. Okay, tell. Yeah.
Sir, here the answer would depend on means n is odd or even and also on k.
Yes, that's true.
So there will be 3 different cases.
Yeah. For example, from 1 to n, you may give some separate names to something like n by 2 floor, n by 2 ceiling, and use these variables.
Yes. Answer in 8 also.
Yeah.
Sir, here how
Sir,
to...
I am not getting how to proceed in 7.
What is the question? Yeah, the odd and even cases will be different. I understand. How many subsets of size k? Yeah. So what is the question? That thing is to...
How to proceed for it?
I should not solve everything. You should think.
I have tried. Can you give a hint, sir?
First of all, find out how many odd numbers are there from 1 to n, how many even numbers are there from 1 to n. This is easy.
Sir, I'm asking about 8th question.
Huh?
I'm asking about 8th question.
8th question. I see. How many subsets contain exactly k Fibonacci numbers? Okay. Then I would suggest you do one thing. You look at the formula of Fibonacci numbers to find out how many Fibonacci numbers are there in the range 1 to n. Okay. So maybe in the next class I will tell you a little bit about that formula. Okay. And if that number turns out to be t, then you have to choose exactly k of these t numbers and the remaining k minus t numbers from the non-Fibonacci numbers. Okay, so it's the determination of t that is the important thing. Is that fine?
Yes, sir.
How many subsets? Okay. Okay. No, actually, okay. You choose t of those, k out of those t Fibonacci numbers, and the remaining things you can either take or not take. So 2 power something, 2 power n minus t. Okay, so it's the determination of that number t that is the important thing. Is that okay?
Yes, sir. Main problem is with finding the number t.
Yes. So you can actually use the formula that the nth or I should use another symbol. Ith Fibonacci number is something like 1 by root 5 times the golden ratio power I. This is
Okay, sir.
okay. Yeah, then?
Yes, sir. Then we can.
Yeah, fine.
Sir, can you share the answers so that we can finally check?
What?
Sir, can you share just the answers, not solutions, so that we can cross-check?
No, in principle, I will not. You should grow the confidence that you can solve these additional exercises. If I tell you the answer or the solution, this will defeat the purpose. So gradually, you have to grow the confidence that you are doing right. Okay.
Yes.
Because in the last class, I told that this uncertainty will always say, telling the solution or the method will actually kill that uncertainty. Okay. So you have to cope with that uncertainty. So that is the reason these extra exercises are given. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's all from my end today.
Yeah, I think we are already beyond time. So thank you.
Yeah.
I hope you are enjoying the YouTube lectures. Please do it at regular intervals. Do not stack it up, because the purpose of the section of having a separate doubt clearing section otherwise will be meaningless if you do not see it regularly. Okay, so please try to watch it regularly. Okay, so I am stopping the recording.
Thank you, sir.